Welcome back to Empowering You with me, Alvin Atkinson. We're continuing to speak with guests from Forsyth County and hear about programs and services for our residents. Do you hear that sound? Well, that's a familiar sound about an insect that comes out of the ground and will be coming around in May. We have Ms. Rebecca Crapps from the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Services at the Forsyth County Center. Rebecca, welcome to our show to talk about bugs, as I say, as my kids might say.
Thank you for having me on the show today, Alvin.
Well, I know that sound is like music to some people's ears, but to others, they don't know what to think. So what is it?
Absolutely, yeah, it does actually sound a little bit, honestly, like it's out of a sci-fi film. But what we're hearing is the male mating call of the cicada insect. And if you can imagine, a lot of folks wonder how they're able to make that loud of a sound as such a small insect. If you imagine an acoustic guitar, right, it has a wide body, lots of space in there. When the strings vibrate, that wide body allows that sound to amplify. So in a male cicada, they have an air sac that acts very much like an acoustic guitar body, and they have a membrane that vibrates, and so that sound is amplified. Now, if you then place 10,000, 20,000 in a forest, you're going to get that loud, deafening sound that can go as high as 120 decibels is where it's been measured.
Right, and so we said 13 years, so this doesn't come out until every 13 years, or where did that come from?
So there are two different kinds of cicadas that we'll see in North Carolina and here in Forsyth County. We have annual cicadas that come out every single year. Typically during the summer, sometimes you hear them referred to as dog day cicadas because they come out during the dog days of summer. Those are the ones people are typically familiar with. About 1.5 inches long, green eyes, very wide, flat head, green on their wings. What you're going to hear a lot about this year, however, are the periodical cicadas. We do have a 13-year brood that is in our area. And so they only come out every 13 years. They look very different. When you hear people talk about cicadas looking kind of like aliens,
Okay.
The annuals do to some degree, but really they're talking about those periodicals. Red eyes, a smaller body, not as robust as the annuals, but they do have red eyes. They have orange on the wings, slightly rounder head. And so they can look very intimidating.
And they come out from all across the county.
All across the southeast, actually.
Oh,
The
wow.
13-year brood is going to be located in the Midwest, as well as in all over the southeast.
Well, I understand that you have some items that you brought with you to sort of show and describe for our audience. So I'm going to just ask you to do that so that our audience can actually, through their ears, see what you will be describing.
Absolutely, yeah. So the two things that most people are going to see when we have a cicada emergence, whether it's our summer annuals or the periodicals, you're going to see two things. You're going to see the adult bodies littering the ground toward the end of that period of time, about a month to a month and a half after the initial emergence. And you're also going to see the skins from the nymphs left behind on vertical structures. So I brought examples of both of those today. The cicada I have with me today is an annual. So it is the larger, more robust body. It has a relatively wide, flat head. You can see the eyes are located really almost on the corners of the head. Long, flat wings. Cicadas are actually, the term cicada is Latin for tree cricket, which is a bit of a misnomer because they're not in the same family as crickets. They're in the Hermoptera family, and that means that they have a half wing. So if you're able to see a cicada, or everyone will see them come May and June, they have a long, kind of narrow, flat wing. The body's about 1.5 inches long, green to black eyes, and a good bit of green on the wings and the body itself. You'll also notice on the underside, when cicadas emerge from their nymph shells, they're actually completely white. Their exoskeleton hasn't fully formed and dried yet. It takes about 3 to 5 days for that to happen. So if someone comes across one that has just emerged, it's actually going to be mostly a creamy white color. And then with the nymph shells, that's what a lot of folks come across. When a cicada emerges, it comes up out of a burrow or a tunnel. Some people may, if it's a moist area under their decks especially, notice what we call chimneys oftentimes, which is actually a little bit of a tunnel above ground. They'll open that space up, come check things out, go back in the ground, give themselves, an opportunity to breathe. Once they come out of that, they immediately start looking for a vertical surface to climb. That could be your fence, it could be trees in your yard. They've even been known to climb things like tombstones, even taller blades of grass. They latch in with their claws, and then they hang out there. If you can imagine someone wearing a tuxedo, a couple sizes too small, black jacket, white shirt underneath, if you cross your arms over, the back of that jacket splits down the middle. That's essentially what's happening with a cicada emergence.
Oh, wow. And, as you were talking, I was just visualizing all this and thinking about how I may have seen cicadas and didn't know what I was looking at. But then as you talked about them being called crickets are being from that, they're not, but the sound that they are making, that's what makes you think of the cricket family, I would imagine. Is that
absolutely
correct?
Yeah, and when you hear the similar sound of crickets, typically very, very late at night, cicadas are more inclined to sing their mating song between 10 and 6 p.m., but really more so late afternoon into dusk. So if you're hearing that sound around late afternoon, dusk in mid-May to mid to late June, it's probably cicadas. If you're hearing that at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's more than likely crickets that you're actually hearing, but it is a similar sound.
Yes, and from what I've taken too is that it's the male cicada trying to let the lady cicada know that, hey, I'm here, and let's produce to keep our generation going.
Absolutely. That's the entire goal of the song. In fact, the females don't have the ability to make that sound. They make a very quiet clicking sound with their wings, and that's how they let males know that they're ready to mate. In fact, I've seen videos where people hold one and snap, and that snapping gets the male cicada to make their call because it tricks them into thinking that it's a female clicking her wings together.
Well, I heard you talked about potential benefits of the cicada. So share with us why it's okay for us to let the cicadas do their thing.
Absolutely. So a lot of people are not going to be a big fan of them being around. Folks that are not a big fan of insects in general. The good news is they're only here for about a month to a month and a half. But there are some benefits. People put a lot of money into their lawns, aeration, making sure that the lawn can breathe, that water filtration is good. Cicadas do that naturally. As they're emerging, they're opening up those spaces in your lawn, and so it's actually helping to aerate, it's helping with water filtration. They also provide a pretty significant food source for birds and other predators. In fact, scientists are fairly certain that the reason we see these 13-year and 17-year emergence in such large numbers is to ensure their survival. Because you can imagine if we had a thunderstorm one day and instead of water it was candy bars, you're going to go out and eat as many candy bars as you can, but we're not going to eat all of them, right? And so it's the same thing with birds, raccoons, other animals that are going to eat the cicadas. They're going to have a big food source, but there's so many of them that they're still going to survive to reproduce.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for coming and sharing information and give you a chance. Is there any other piece of information you want to share about my friends, the cicadas?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things that are really important to note. There's going to be a lot of conversation about cicadas this year, not only in our area, but also in the Midwest. There is a second brood emerging at the same time. That brood and the brood that's going to emerge here actually have not emerged at the same time since Thomas Jefferson was president.
Wow.
But they are only overlapping in a really small area. So in a little area of Illinois is the only area where they're actually going to emerge and overlap. So we will not see that other brood here. We will only see the 13-year. That's the first thing. The second thing is they don't bite. They're not a problem for pets. They're not a problem for humans. They're not a problem for crops. The Hemiptera family order that they're in, they are liquid feeders. So they do have kind of a straw-like piercing mouth part. They're taking a little bit of liquid out of a tree. It's not damaging to the tree, but they don't bite humans or pets or feed on any sort of crops. So there's nothing to be concerned about with that. So there's no need to swat at them. Pesticides don't really work for cicadas. They're just something that we'll live with for a month to a month and a half. There are two things that homeowners really do need to know, though. One is you may see an increase in mole activity in your lawn right around the time that they're getting ready to emerge. And that's certainly something that if homeowners notice that, they can reach out to Cooperative Extension. We're happy to give some advice there on how to deal with that. The other thing is small trees can be susceptible to a little bit of damage as the females are laying their eggs. Regular established trees, it's not a problem. Younger trees, it could be. Simple garden netting over sapling and younger trees is beneficial, or just simply waiting to plant them until after the emergence would be what's recommended.
Great. Well, if you would then, Rebecca, tell folks how they can get more information on cicadas or any other information that they might need concerning what's being done at the Cooperative Extension Center.
Absolutely. So our North Carolina Cooperative Extension website through the Forsyth County forsyth.cc website will have articles and information that can be searched for. And I'm also happy to answer any questions that individuals have, concerns, and I can be reached at 336-703-2858 at the Extension office.
Great. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.